The Edmonton Oilers pull ahead in their series with the Dallas Stars. The Carolina Hurricanes find themselves on the brink of elimination, and the New York Islanders have a new general manager. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen today. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It is great to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Oilers, a very busy man these days, Nick Zararis. And Nick, you got to be happy, and Oilers fans have to be happy with their win in Game 3. What was the thing that separated the Oilers from the Stars most in this game?
So they built on what they did a nice job of in game number 2 of absorbing pressure defensively, giving up a lot of volume, but not a lot of quality, and then attacking quickly on the counter. Quite a few of those odd man rushes, the 2 McDavid goals, the 1 Hyman goal. And the Oilers, when they're at their best, are kind of that opportunistic counter-attacking team. And to get that type of production at 5-on-5, to have a game where Draisaitl doesn't pick up a point and you win 6-1, like you said at the top, it's a good feeling to have that they're getting production up and down the lineup from guys who, John Klingberg had 12 games of NHL hockey before the playoffs this year. So when you're getting production from guys who you took flyers on in the middle of the season, it's a good place to be in. And the exciting thing, if you're an Oilers fan, they still have a little room here to squeeze more out of the group. The power play still isn't running great. The penalty kill is the worst of the 4 teams that are still left. So with that, and they're up 2-1 in the series, it's really easy to start talking yourself into, well, if they can get those things going, maybe Florida isn't as scary as it seems right now.
What is your biggest concern after 3 games? I mean, up 2-1, next game's at home, but what has you a little bit concerned?
Someone on Dallas is going to go nuclear at some point. A lot of the guys throughout that lineup, whether it's Rantanen, Robertson, Duchesne, haven't really had moments yet, and largely been a product of the game so far. Game 2 and game 3, a little more defensive until the dam broke in game number 3. So I expect someone on Dallas to have a moment or two, and it'll be incumbent upon the Oilers to really just absorb that, go with it, and answer. And to their credit, they have been quality, and they have been able to survive the tough stretches. And then when they've had moments where they've needed a play, they found them. And I keep going back to the conversation I was having with someone right after game 3 against the Kings in the first round, where they were 30 seconds away from being down 3-0 in a series. And we were talking about, well, what does Stan Bowman do to fix the team? They score, they go to overtime, they win that game. They subsequently rattle off 6 in a row there, win the second round series against Vegas. Here they are up 2-1 against Dallas. And they have really put together, the word I keep going back to is professional, that they get the job done. It's not the prettiest because they play a lot of defense, probably a little bit more than you would like to against a team like Dallas, but they've done a really nice job of finding different ways to win, not being overly reliant on any one guy. I mean, Skinner was the guy today. Skinner had a great second period, the most saves he's had in a playoff game, and that's a guy who got sat for 5-6 games over the course of the first 2 rounds. So that's one of the keys to winning in this league this time of year. You got to have, everybody needs to have a moment. I mean, they're up to 18 different guys who've scored a goal in the playoffs, if I remember correctly what they said on the ESPN broadcast.
Yeah, not bad. You talked about the 2 goals by McDavid and Hyman contributing. You also mentioned defense and how there was a volume of shots, but not quality shots. Give me a guy on defense who has quietly helped this team limit the high danger chances.
I really like what Jake Wallman's brought to the Oilers. He's probably their best skating defenseman and really puts himself in good positions to break plays up. To this point in the playoffs, Dallas had been the team that was really attacking off of the rush and playing a little more defense and counterattacking to try and get the puck to their more high-end guys like Rantanen, Robertson, Hintz. In transition, you can create off the rush a little bit more dangerous looks. You get the goalie moving left to right, create those 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s, and the Oilers have done a really good job of limiting the stars, of corralling guys to the outside as soon as they get in the zone. And that's really jumped out when you watch the Wallman and Klingberg pair, which wasn't on the team a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And that pair has worked arguably as good as any in the playoffs. And they're playing Brett Kulak the most minutes he's ever played in his entire life this year at 32 years old, I think. Someone who's been a fifth or a sixth defenseman for most of his career, getting up to that 24, 25-minute mark, which is just, it's a good problem to have. And at some point, Matthias Ekholm will come back, and then you raise the conversation of who's going to come out of a defense that's working really well.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have, but yes, it is indeed an issue. You talked about the slow start in the series against the Kings. Game one obviously was a rough one in this series. What has been the biggest difference between the games that the Oilers have won and the games that the Oilers have struggled through?
They've been a bit more defensive. They've been a little bit more willing to be in their own zone and really try and hem Dallas to the outside. And like we've been talking about here, limit the high danger offense, because when you have a forward group deep enough that you can play Wyatt Johnston on the third line, you have a lot of depth. And the Oilers on paper aren't as talented as Dallas 1-9 up front. And the Oilers, to their credit, have been really good defensively. Skinner, like I had said before, played his best game of the playoffs so far tonight, and that's a good thing to have going your way when the goaltending has really been the concern. I think if I remember correctly, after Friday, the stat was something along the lines of if they get 860 goaltending, they've won every game in the playoffs that they've had 860 goaltending. So they're not asking a whole lot from Skinner or from Pickard when Pickard was in net. And building off of it, and I think that's the big key. They've incrementally gotten better as the playoffs have gone on. Like I watch this team now, and I don't really feel like there's a weak link the way there was last year, where their fourth line was a little bit empty. Their third defensive pair was a little more volatile and explosive. And even Darnell Nurse is having a pretty solid, steady playoffs with no big mistakes. I can't say no big mistakes because the penalty on Hintz and the subjectivity of whether or not that's a dirty play, he should have gotten suspended, whatever. But he's having a quiet playoffs, whereas last year he was the highest variance player in the entire playoffs. So they've had a lot break their way, and they still have room.
It's been 35 years since the Oilers won a Stanley Cup. It's been since 1993 that any Canadian-based team has won the Stanley Cup. Do either of these things put any more pressure on this team right now?
So what I've been telling people is this is McDavid's LeBron year. The Heat went to the finals that first year. LeBron and Wade were there with Bosch, and they lost to the Mavericks, and I think it was 6 games. And then the next year, they went back to the finals. He won MVP. He was the best player in the league, and you get these man on the mission type storylines, and there's a reason these movies are fun. There's a reason Sylvester Stallone and Schwarzenegger made all those movies in the 80s. Everybody likes the one guy doing everything he can to overcome the odds. And it sounds weird to say a guy who's got the most points of anyone in the playoffs probably could be playing a little bit better, but he probably does have a little bit more to give here. And you got to really start to believe. And I wouldn't say outside pressure in respect to winning for the Oilers, winning for Canada. I would say it's an accountability thing. It's McDavid knows he's the best player in the world, and you got to have the team success if you want to be in that all-time great conversation. And this is a guy who, from the time he was 5 or 6 years old, was already comparing himself to Sidney Crosby, who was, 17 years old at the time. And he understands the responsibility and the expectations of being the next great Canadian hockey player within the lineage of going from Gretzky to Lemieux to Crosby, McDavid. And McKinnon is making a valiant effort to be in that conversation, but I still take McDavid when you see games like this and moments like this. And he's slowly but surely found who he is as a professional, as a leader. And I think the documentary that Amazon did a nice job of portraying that and giving him a bit of depth beyond the robot most people view him as.
Yeah, and that certainly is kind of revealing for a change. So what's the key to winning this series, finishing it out?
the defense has to keep doing its job because Dallas is going to keep pushing, and the desperation will only increase with each passing game. Dallas had a really good second period in this game, and the Oilers were able to withstand that. Stu did a tremendous job and gave them a chance to win. And really, this time of year, and this will sound a bit simple, but if you're in a coin flip game 50-50 this time of year, you feel pretty good about taking that when you got McDavid, Draisaitl, Bush, and you're going to get Ekholm back at some point. If you're in all of these games and you have a chance to win all these games, that's really all you can ask for.
Fair enough. Nick, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Locked On Oilers is available on all the major podcasting platforms on YouTube. My Twitter and Instagram are just Nick Zararis. My name, Nick, Zararis, and my TikTok is Nick Zararis Sports.
All right, Nick, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. I love eating out, but not at the expense of my future financial security. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you could use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Carolina Hurricanes, Zach Martin. And Zach, Saturday night, not kind to the Carolina Hurricanes. Through 40 minutes, they looked good. And then in the third period, everything just seemed to implode. What went wrong in that third period?
Before we start talking about despair, Gil's always good to talk to you, my friend. So thank you for the invite per usual. Implosion-wise, where do you start with that? You go into the third period, you're tied, probably the best 40 minutes you've played all series, and then it's just one goal, okay, then it's another one, and then it's another one, and then there's another one, and you give up 4 goals in 8 minutes. I think 2 of them were in like 29 seconds. Just bad turnovers. Dmitry Orlov just had a rough game. Like, you give up the first goal goes off your skate, and then multiple turnovers. You get absolutely burned by Boquist on, I think it was the 4-1 goal, I believe. It's just, and the thing too is, Gil, like, the crazy part is the Hurricanes had 2 power play goals in this game, and they went perfect on the PK. Like, they completely turned their special teams around, but it's just turnovers, defensive breakdowns, and I mean, that's why the Panthers are the defending champs for a reason. They're just that good. Gotta give Florida credit. They're just a really great team, and that's why they're one game away from going back for their third consecutive Stanley Cup final. They're just gotta give them a lot of credit.
Yeah. How much do you think the physicality of the Florida Panthers is impacting? Because turnovers and bad defense is not the way the Carolina Hurricanes got here. They are known for being a tight defensive team that doesn't give up a lot of quality scoring chances. Is the physicality a major factor here?
Well, the crazy part is, like, the Hurricanes have out-hit the Panthers for a couple of the games in this series, so they're bringing the physicality back to them, but it's just Florida has a way of, we've seen this for the last, if you're including this playoff, you're counting 3 straight consecutive playoffs where they're just imposing their will on whoever they're playing against. Like, it's, getting under guys' skins, getting those little extra hits in, it's because how it goes in the playoffs. You get one little pop and the ref tells you to stop and you stop. And over a course of, however many games, it starts, annoying teams no matter who you are or anything. It's just Florida is a team that's built for the playoffs where they will just absolutely grind you down. So yeah, the physicality is there, but it's the mental warfare of just getting those little extra whacks every single time. And it's just one of those things where Florida is beating you on the ice, they're beating you mentally, and they're beating you physically. It's basically just, it's a complete like imposing their will on the other team. And like I said, it's just one of those things where Florida has the identity, they run with it, and that's just how it goes with the team that's built like this. It's a mental warfare with these guys.
Yeah, there was one obviously controversial hit, Eetu Luostarinen, with a boarding major and a game misconduct for a hit on Jackson Blake. Talk me through that and what impact, if any, it had on the game.
Well, I think because you saw the play, it's like, they're going towards the board. You can see, Luostarinen's already got his stick on Jackson Blake. He's already kind of hooking him. And you see Blake try to pull up, and of course he scrunches down a little bit because it's kind of hard to try to stand up when you got a stick holding you down. And Luostarinen, instead of just pulling, dropping his hands off the stick or trying to at least peel off from Blake, he just continues and just hits him right into the boards head first. And initially, no hand went up for the hook or the board. And the thing is, like you hear from Bissonnette and Eddie Olczyk and all of them, they're saying there should have been a hooking call at least if it was going to be anything. And of course, then you see the boarding, and of course, someone to argue, oh well, what can Luostarinen do there? It's like, well, he's the checking guy, and the rule book goes you're supposed to be in control of your checks, and he went through them, and that's what it was. So I mean, nothing you can do about that. It's just it was an unfortunate play that happened. Luostarinen gets kicked out early, and and a lot of people are going to tell like this game was going to get out of hand because if it's that one, and then as you see the game progress, it was just extra hits after extra hits. And I mean, Panthers are up 6-1. You see Matthew Tkachuk chasing Sebastian Aho at one point too, taking him to the ground, starts punching him on the ice, and then he gets a rough and a 10-game misconduct too. So it's just one of those things where the game just got out of hand. The refs were just not in control of all the extra stuff.
What is it in your mind that has caused the Hurricanes to struggle in conference finals?
That's a great question. I know 2 playoffs ago, you're looking at the 23 conference final. At that point, you don't have Andrei Svechnikov. You got guys that were kind of out. And, they lost every game by 1 goal. So you really can't put the 23 final on anything else other than it was just the Panthers got their bounces. Of course, we all remember that game 1 where it was quadruple overtime. Every other game, after that was an overtime. Game 4 was 1-0 with a Matthew Tkachuk goal with 3 seconds left. So that was just unfortunate bounces where the Hurricanes couldn't figure it out. Then
is it mental at this point where it's been going on for so long? How many games now are we up to that they've lost in a row in a conference final?
Unfortunately, it's 15 consecutive losses at this point. I know a lot of guys are saying it's not mental. They try not to focus on that because they're trying to focus on the now. And some people are like, well, you can't really look at the 2009 team because that was so long ago. And that was even before the height of Crosby and Malkin. They were there for a bit, but it's like those were still 2 young guys on the Penguins team that went back-to-back, cup appearances against the Red Wings when Detroit was still in the West. And that tells you how long ago that was. Now it's just, it's unfortunate things where, injuries kind of cropped up at the wrong time for the Canes. Like I said, you lose Andre before the 23 playoffs. Now you lost Walker. You lost Chatfield. Chatfield's been out the entire series. He's one of those guys that they can really rely on too. It's unfortunate injuries, and it's just Florida being Florida, man. It's just they have somehow found a way to get back there once again, and it's just one of those things. it's a lot of credit to Florida. They are just built differently, and they're just exposing a lot of things that I don't know. It's hard to describe like where this whole thing is at.
Obviously, it's hard to win 4 games in a row, but what do the Hurricanes have to do to win 1 game and get this series back to Carolina?
I'd say try to play your system. And Unfortunately, right now, like you turn the special teams around because you gave up 4 power play goals in the first 2 games, and you go perfect in game 3. You score a couple yourself, but then you still lose 6-2. Like I said, it could be like a system for a system thing, but right now it's just, I guess, try to weather whatever storm you can and try to try to bend, not break. But at this point, I don't even know. Like you played 40 great minutes of hockey. It's 1-1. Pierre Kachekup's keeping you in the game, making big saves. You're fighting, and then of course just a couple bounces here and there go in the wrong direction, and it just kind of snowballs. So I guess it's just score. Guys need to shoot the Hurricanes. Honestly, Gil, if I had to answer this question honestly, shoot the dang puck. Like, I don't know. Andrei Svechnikov has now gone 6 consecutive periods without a shot. Sebastian Aho had 1 shot last game. I think he had 3 in this one. The big boys need to score. I mean, Seth Jarvis did get a power play goal, but at that point it's 6-1. Like, okay, good. Chris Paul shoots a 3 and you're down by 42. That's essentially what it is. So Carolina just needs to stop being so hesitant. Like, we all know they're supposed to be a high volume shooting team, but they had like 17 shots in game 2. They're just, I don't know what it is. They're just so hesitant on shooting. They're always trying to find those extra pretty passes. Like, you can't do that in the playoffs. You got to go for those greasy goals, and you got to, throw pucks on net. Good things happen because it's working for the Panthers. They're throwing pucks on net. So yeah, it's just stop with the hesitancy. Get the urgency right from the drop has to be there.
No doubt.
That's all I can say. Yeah.
No doubt. All right, Zach, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Yeah, you can find the podcast on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. You can find it on X at LO_Hurricanes. If you want to follow me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. I have a link tree where you can check out where to listen or watch the podcast and check out all the articles that I do over at the Hockey Writers as a credentialed NHL writer.
All right, Zach, thank you so much.
Thanks, Gil.
So, Gil, Mathieu Darche, as we said, has been hired officially as the new Islanders general manager. There was talks about Bergevin for a little bit. We got a different French Canadian in the seat here. And what were your initial thoughts on the hire?
I'm happy about this hire. I think it was the right move. Whenever you make a new hire, you generally go after someone who has the opposite traits in some ways of the person you just let go, because you're trying to correct their mistakes. So if Lou Lamoriello was a little older and a little more set in his ways, you're bringing in someone who is a little more than half of Lou's age and someone who has never been a general manager before. He's been an assistant GM. He's done a lot of things. So instead of a very experienced older person, you're bringing in a younger, up-and-coming person who is now being a GM on his own for the first time.
Yeah, and he has a really strong background as an assistant GM, especially with the Tampa Bay Lightning, which I think is something that's really attractive because they had and continue to have a large degree of success in that team. And he was there with multiple Stanley Cups. And so I think including in a series where they defeated the New York Islanders. So how does that kind of flip affect what the Islanders might do?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. And look, he's also helped build up a farm system. And the Lightning haven't just had like momentary success. They've been successful and continue to be successful for the better part of a decade. So not only did they win 2 Stanley Cups, but they have sustained being a contender longer than most teams would expect to be up there.
Yeah, I think the 1-2 punch of the team management and the coach in Tampa has had a lot to do with that.
Yes.
The Islanders had a pre-existing coach in Patrick Roy behind the bench. Do you think that will continue? Or do you think Darche will want to put his stamp on the organization?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I'd say it's 50-50 right now. And maybe the biggest thing working in Patrick Roy's favor is that there are no obvious candidates out there who head and shoulders would be better than Patrick Roy, like immediate thought kind of a thing. And that the other thing is this: Patrick Roy and Lou Lamoriello, there was tension there throughout the year. Lou Lamoriello never really gave Patrick Roy a team that fit his style of coaching. One time, Roy even said, "Yeah, I'm coaching the team that Lou gave me," which is not exactly a ringing endorsement of your GM, and kind of indicates they were never on the same page entirely. So I get the feeling that Roy gets a chance this year, but maybe the leash is very short. And the alternative is Darche wants to put his stamp on the team right away and moves in a different direction. If Darche is not going to give Roy the team he wants, they might as well cut ties now.
So, what do you see other than maybe that coaching consideration as Darche's kind of first step with this organization and looking at the roster as it currently stands?
Couple of things. First of all, supposedly Kyle Palmieri, who is an unrestricted free agent July 1st, was either very close to a deal with Lou for an extension, or they had a handshake deal for an extension. We don't know. Lou is so secretive.
Right.
Got to figure out whether to keep him or move on from him. So that's one. You've got a number of unrestricted free agents, including Noah Dobson and Alexander Romanov. So that's two of your top four defensemen. You got to figure out whether you sign them to a bridge deal, go to arbitration, or sign them long term. And then in the big picture, you've got a lot of bad contracts that Lou left over, guys who are 30 and over, who are either slowing down or just not worth the contract that Lou signed them to. You got to try to make this organization younger, faster, and more skilled. And the question is, how quickly can you do it? And then as another consideration, Bridgeport and the whole developmental system of this organization is an absolute hot mess. They won 4 out of 36 home games last year in Bridgeport, which is an AHL record for futility. And I think Darche, with his background as an assistant GM, will revamp the entire organization in that sense, and hopefully not make Bridgeport the black hole where prospects go in, but they never come out.
Right. I think that's a huge part of some of the issues in the Islanders organization, and player development has been a thorn in the side and of the team for quite some time, where you just don't have the players to step up or to be next man up in injury situations because there's nothing there. And I think that's going to take a while to fix. I think that though you're going to get a jump start on it, obviously with the first overall pick in the draft this year. Has Darche given any indication which direction he's thinking about going, or what you would want him to do in this situation?
Yeah, he hasn't given his introductory press conference yet, so we haven't heard from him officially in that regard. Look, my thought process is you take the best player who will have the biggest impact on your organization. Most scouts seem to think that's Matthew Schaefer. If you want to go forward, you have Misa there. You have Hagens, who's the Long Island native. That's a sentimental favorite. But I would stick with Schaefer if all things were equal. But you've got a first-round pick this year, the number 1 overall pick. You have 2 first-round picks in 2026, which is the deeper draft. You have you got Cole Iserman probably another year or 2 away. There are some pieces to build around here to help speed this retool along.
And how do you think he can sell free agents on the New York Islanders? Or do you not want him to think about free agents at all and just start building from within and really do like a true rebuild here?
Yeah, ownership, based on the statement they put out when they announced the hiring of Darche, indicated they want to be competitive right away. So I don't think we're looking at a full rebuild here. But I think for the free agent question, I would wait 1 year before signing. I don't mind signing some mid-level free agents to fill out the roster, but if you want to make that impact move, get, Cal Ritchie, who's another top prospect they acquired in the Brock Nelson trade. See what he can do. See how Isaiah George plays this year on defense, a young defenseman who did pretty well during a brief stint with the team. See how these pieces integrate. See what you need. Move out some of the dead contracts and older players. And then for 2026, 2027, I'd start to add maybe that impact free agent.
All right. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of work to do with the New York Islanders, but I do feel like the team could be heading in a good direction as far as building for the future. And I think that's a good thing for the division overall, regardless of my loyalties to the Flyers.
Yeah, I mean, hope is back on Long Island, and I think that's the biggest thing, that after they missed the playoffs under Lou again, and Lou kept doubling down, moving on from Lou Lamoriello just took some of the clouds away. Now, it's going to take a little time, but at least they're heading in the right direction.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll continue to check in on the Islanders as the offseason continues. Excited to see what they end up doing at the draft as well.
Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. You could find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank my guests, Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers, Zach Martin of Locked On Hurricanes, and Rachel Donner for speaking to me about the Islanders' new GM situation. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of Locked On NHL, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. We're here every day, Monday through Saturday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the world of hockey, plus NHL Game Night anytime there is a game, bringing you the latest in that department. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thank you so much for watching and listening to the Locked On NHL podcast.